The Ottoman Empire is known as one of the most successful empires, which established its power, influence, and reign from its genesis in the early 14th century until its demise in the early 20th century. The Ottoman Empire saw much of its growth in power and influence in the early and mid 16th century, which saw the reign of both Selim the Grim and Suleiman the Magnificent. Both of these emperors were pivotal in the growth of the Ottoman Empire, specifically with the conquering of the Mamluk Empire, which gave the Ottoman Empire superior power over the Islamic world. Although the Ottoman Empire saw some of its most influential days in the early and mid 16th century, the transition into the 17th century was not incredibly smooth and prosperous. As the 17th century began to approach, an environmental phenomenon known as the Little Ice Age hit the Ottoman Empire and caused many difficulties which were in many ways out of their control. This unexpected environmental phenomenon provoked economical, societal, and political instability within the Ottoman Empire. In the year 1590, as the Little Ice Age was starting to affect the Ottoman dynasty, the instability was not so much economical and political, but it began to affect the rural communities, which would then trickle down and cause many more instabilities within the empire. The empire began to see massive droughts, which affected the ability of farmers to grow crops and maintain their livestock alive. The Ottoman army, which at the time was one of the most powerful in the world, saw much of its protein consumption in the way of sheep. However, during this time period, sheep, among other livestock, became rare as farmers could not afford to raise them under the current environmental conditions. Following a decrease in food across the empire, many bandits arose in an attempt to bring food home. As resources became rare in the empire, a gang of bandits, better known as the Selali army, began to form. The Selali army took control of many of the territories within Anatolia and the surrounding areas, which provoked the Ottoman army to detain them. However, although the Selali army was not known as a formidable army, they were able to defeat the well-trained and powerful army on many occasions until the fall in 1609, after multiple battles with the Ottoman army. The unexpected success from a gang of untrained bandits was one of the first examples in which the power of the Ottoman army began to decrease. In addition, the growth of a gang of bandits within the empire due to a lack of resources exposed some of the structural weaknesses of a majorly agricultural empire, which could easily be affected by a change in the local climate. In addition to the Salali revolt, the Little Ice Age saw much more military instability with the occurrence of the Great Turkish War, which was a conflict between the Ottoman dynasty and many of the surrounding European nations. Although the cause for the Great Turkish War was not directly linked to the Little Ice Age, the many defeats within the war were partially due to the effects coming from the Little Ice Age. Although over the previous decades the Ottoman army had been known as one of the major military powers in the world, the Great Turkish War saw failures which would be detrimental to the power of the Ottoman Empire, specifically the Treaty of Karlowitz, which saw the first major loss of territory in the Ottoman army. The Treaty of Karlowitz saw the loss of major Ottoman territories. For example, Hungary and Transylvania were lost to the Habsburg monarchy, Croatia was ceded to Austria, Dalmatia coastline territories were given to Venice, and Podolia was returned to Poland. It was argued that the Ottoman army, known as the Janissaries, were not able to be as successful as they had been in previous years because of the food shortages which had come as a result of the Little Ice Age and its effects on the Ottoman farmers. This shortage in resources did not allow Ottomans to have a successful campaign and may have been the pivotal reason for the lackluster performance of the Janissaries during this wartime period. In previous decades, the Janissaries were one of the most feared armies, and so was the Ottoman Empire. However, after the loss of territory, there was much doubt of the political power of the Ottoman Empire and sultans, specifically within the Ottoman army and the empire itself. The failure of the war led to the deposition of Sultan Mehmed IV, as the Karlowitz Treaty was seen as a major failure for the Ottoman Empire, which seemed to be falling apart under the reign of Sultan Mehmed IV and his inability to rule the nation under a time of instability caused in part by the Little Ice Age. Although the Ottoman Empire did not fall for a few more decades, the Little Ice Age may have been one of the major dominoes which began to affect the perception of the Ottoman power and would potentially lead to instabilities which would cause the empire to lose a majority of their influence and power over their surrounding nations. In the years previous to the Little Ice Age, the Ottoman dynasty was prosperous and respected by surrounding nations. However, as the Little Ice Age began to affect the agricultural empire, much of the perception within and outside of the Ottoman Empire began to change as they were no longer seen with the same level of respect, as the Janissaries proved not to be as effective as they had been so in the previous decades. Overall, although many historians focus on the Great Turkish War as one of the major pivotal points for the loss of power of the Ottoman dynasty, the occurrence of the Little Ice Age had just as much influence, as a lack in resources within a society which was mainly composed and powered by either farmers or military personnel was greatly affected by the inability to produce adequate resources, specifically sheep, which had been in previous years been the major source of protein for the Janissaries. It must be mentioned that the Ottoman Empire did try to fix some of the weaknesses within the structure of the empire with the Crepula reforms. However, they were proved to be ineffective at fully fixing the agricultural, military, and political problems which had begun to accumulate and grow as the drought in the empire began to take its toll on its subjects and on the political world. Overall, this video essay covers the potential impacts that the Little Ice Age had on the political influence and power of the Ottoman Empire. Some sources used for this video essay was A History of the Ottoman Empire by Douglas Howard, Sam White's The Silali Rebellion, The Climate of Rebellion in the Early Modern Ottoman Empire, as well as Stephen Searle's work on the economic instability at the time of the Little Ice Age, among many other sources which cover the change in the Ottoman Empire during the Little Ice Age.